We are capable of taking him out by ourselves, but we are only requesting the international community to enforce a no-fly zone.
But the man he wants to take out is showing no signs of leaving, spending Monday telling international media that he has Libya's full support.
Me, all my people with me, they love me all.
But if they do love you...
They will die to protect me, my people.
If you say they do love you, then why are they capturing Benghazi and they say they're against you there? Why are they in Zawiya?
It is a guide, and not my people.
In an interview that will do little to convince the international community that he's of a sound state of mind, Colonel Gaddafi also laughed off mounting pressure to leave the country.
Who would leave his homeland? Why do I leave my homeland? Why do I leave Libya?
That means the bloodshed and fierce firefights aren't likely to stop anytime soon. This amateur video was uploaded on social media on Monday and is said to show fresh battles at Misrata Airport, a sprawling airbase that each side now partly controls. Al Jazeera cannot independently verify it or another uploaded video said to show the aftermath of battles at the same airport on Sunday. Misrata is 200 kilometres to the east of Tripoli, its strategic value possibly best explained by the huge amount of weapons and ammunition now in the hands of those determined to bring Gaddafi down. Dan Nolan, Al Jazeera.
Well, in the Libyan city of Misrata, that's around 200 kilometers east of the capital, Tripoli, there are reports of more fighting. That's as pro-Gaddafi forces battle with those opposed to Gaddafi. And Abdullah is a witness to the latest fighting. He spoke to Al Jazeera earlier and described to us what he saw.
There's now artillery shells firing on the suburbs of Misrata and on the Air Force College southwest of Misrata. There are also helicopters trying to bomb the local broadcaster. They're also using heavy weapons against the protesters. Also last night, helicopters dropped leaflets with threats from the regime. The plane fell in the sea and we arrested 5 of its crew. We have weapons we're trying to use to defend ourselves, but it's normal weapons that cannot compare to the planes or tanks or armoured vehicles or the heavy weapons they use to bomb us. We are defending righteousness and freedom. We want him to leave.
Abdul Fattah Yunus used to be Libya's interior minister and head of the Libyan special forces. He renounced his posts last week and he's now leading what appears to be a growing rebel army. Our correspondent Jackie Rowland caught up with them and has the latest.
The ledger is thick and it's filling up with names. This recruitment office has been open only a matter of days and already hundreds of men have signed on. The army for which they're enrolling doesn't exist yet, but that isn't deterring the volunteers. These young soldiers joined the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi on the first day. Now they've enlisted in the rebel force and they say they're ready to march on Tripoli.
We don't want money or cars or anything. We want to protect the country and its people.
A lot of young people are sacrificing themselves. They want to go to the West. We have old men and women who will go to the West to liberate it.
So there's no shortage of volunteers, no shortage of patriotism and revolutionary zeal. But as to exactly when, how, and even if they intend to advance on the capital, that's another question.
The anti-Gaddafi forces say their first task is to defend the east of the country, what they call Free Libya. Taking the fight to the capital would be the next step.
We have a force that can protect Benghazi. The force may use heavy trucks to transport tanks to go to Tripoli and pass through Sirte on the way because it still supports the regime. The power we have is enough. The ammunition, supplies and fuel are also enough. We don't have a problem.
But a tour of this airfield paints a less optimistic picture of what the rebels have at their disposal. Rusting Soviet-era fighter planes that haven't left the tarmac in years. All part of Gaddafi's strategy to prevent the army from ever threatening his rule.
The army was dismantled years ago. The regime is concentrating only on security units.
The victory they're celebrating is incomplete as long as Muammar Gaddafi remains in control of cities in the west. and most Libyans fear he will not be defeated without more bloodshed. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera in eastern Libya.
Well, the United States has taken a number of steps to put pressure on Muammar Gaddafi. President Barack Obama met with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to discuss the situation. The military says it's moving naval as well as air forces closer to Libya to enforce a possible no-fly zone. And the U.S. Treasury Department says it's frozen $30 billion in Libyan assets. The European Union, from its end, approved its own slate of sanctions against Gaddafi's government. The EU approved an arms embargo, as well as a visa ban and asset freeze. Europe is also considering imposing a no-fly zone. A meeting in Geneva, the UN Human Rights Council is considering similar action. It's already paved the way for the country's expulsion from the 47-member UN body. Well, we're slowly getting an idea of the scale of the humanitarian emergency taking place in Libya, but the truth of the matter is that aid workers are still not able to get in and fighting is ongoing. So there's no accurate death toll, just estimates. The UN's humanitarian chief, Valerie Amos, has told Al Jazeera of reports that between 600 and 2,000 people have already been killed, and that's just in the capital, Tripoli. Italy said 5 days ago that estimates of 1,000 people dead elsewhere were credible. And more than 100,000 people have fled into Egypt, Tunisia and Niger, and that's according to the United Nations. Well, the UN World Food Programme began shipping food supplies to countries that are bordering Libya. 80 tons of high-energy biscuits have just arrived in Tunisia, and the World Health Organization is also sending medical supplies to the Egyptian border with Libya. The UN says tens of thousands of people have been leaving the country because of the unrest. Andrea Lowry from Refugees International says that governments need help to deal with all the people streaming across the borders.
I mean, there is commitment from humanitarian organizations, and also what we have heard from the two governments, the Egyptian and the Tunisian government, to provide facilities, to set up centers that would be reached by those fleeing Libya, and basic material needs being met. When I talk about material needs, need access to water, clothing, food, shelter, and so on. These governments that have already said we are going to keep our borders open need to be helped by the international community, by the donor community. Of course, they don't have the capacity to mount these emergency response by themselves, but there are agencies like the High Commissioner for Refugees, international non-governmental organization, the International Organization of Migration. They have tens of years of experience in setting up immediate centers and facilities to cater for these people.
Well, the uprisings in North Africa have stirred opposition movements further south. Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe is another longtime leader whose rule has been marked by repression. And now activists meeting to discuss the recent unrest have been rounded up and allegedly tortured. Jonah Hull reports.
Munyaradzi Gwizai is a former opposition member of Zimbabwe's parliament and the man who convened a meeting last Saturday in Harare to discuss the uprisings in North Africa. Gwizai and 45 others were arrested, allegedly tortured. They now face a charge of treason that carries the death penalty.
He obviously